All right, good evening. It's Tom Aiken. I'm the success engineer at BoomLife, and I started BoomLife a while back because I wanted to help people create systems that turn their values and their dreams into values-driven success. And one of the things I do is this series called BoomShare, where I try to find people who I think are just doing some pretty incredible things, values-based things, and I want to share what they're doing with the people in my world. So tonight, my guest is Jeremy Brown. Jeremy's the founder of Warrior. Warrior is a nonprofit he started to provide faith-based mentorship in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my guest. Jeremy, good evening. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for letting me come on here and hang out with you for a little bit, Tom. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be on here with you, so thank you.
Well, the honor is mine as well. I really appreciate it also. I'm just going to kind of turn it over to you, ask you to talk about what your mission is, what values kind of drove you to start it, and I'll let you take it from there, sir.
Well, thank you. I mean, and basically what we are is we are a mentorship organization, and we specialize in mentoring young men between the ages of 18 and 35 years old. Mostly we're either directionless or fatherless, or we're just looking for more. We're looking to go deeper, become better, and experience God more in our life. And to mentor these young men between the ages of 18 and 35 whereabouts, we do that in many different ways. One of them is one-on-one mentorship, small group mentorship, and what we call warrior workouts. And I'll explain a little bit more about what those are as we go on, but here's essentially what we're trying to do, Tom, is if you look at all the generations of America right now, and if you look at what's happening in America right now, we must have ways that the older men with all their experience, their wisdom, and their knowledge can pass down all of those assets to the younger generation coming up. So what we're trying to do is get the more experienced men to come down and give them systems and ways and tools to mentor these men between the ages of 18 and 35, because it is a little theory we have that all the other generations hinge on these young men between the ages of 18 and 35. The youth look to these men to learn the way, and they duplicate what they're doing, and the more experienced men, the more seasoned men, come back to them to pass on legacy, to renew vision, to renew enthusiasm. So we are focused on those men because we want to become the best anywhere around here. I'd be ambitious to say the best in the world at working with these young men between the ages of 18 and 35, getting them locked into God first and foremost, and then working on every area of their life after that relationship is intact.
That sounds pretty awesome. So it sounds to me like you picked there's got to be some basis then to that age group. It sounds like you're saying they're very influential to the next generation. Is that correct?
They're highly influential. I mean, young men are the men. Again, the youth look to them to learn the way, and they duplicate it. And the young men are usually the age group that in the families they cause the most stress, generate the most amount of worries, and can cause the most problems. On the flip side of that, they're the most influential usually in a family unit, one of the most influential things in a family unit. And when they change, when they get converted, when their life becomes better, they transform, everybody else tends to do the same thing in that family unit. So they're very influential. And if I could, I'd like to just kind of share the story of how it all started. That kind of helps everybody understand, what we're doing, essentially, the purpose behind it. We'll get to that in a minute here, I'm sure.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So how everything happened is about, just over 3 years ago, I was at a point in my life where you could say, like you say in your book, Tom, I had a situation. You talk about that. We were talking just before a year where, you have the section where you talk about the 4 universal results, and then it goes right into the situation. And you kind of lay all that out and provide a system for that. And I was definitely in the middle of a situation. Now, I didn't really know how to handle it. I didn't have a model like you spell out in the book that talks about here is how, your decisions and your actions can influence a situation. I was clueless at what to do. And what had basically happened is I was at a point where I lost all my money, my business, and then my girlfriend dumped me all within a couple-week period of time. And I mention that because those were significant things, because those were the things I put my identity in. I derived my sense of self and my value from money, women, and business. And when those three things were gone, when I didn't have a business anymore, when I didn't have any money, I didn't have the girl hanging on my arm anymore, it caused me to say, okay, I've always been this confident guy with all these people coming to me for advice and whatnot, but now that these things are gone, what do I have to be confident in? Or in other words, now that I don't have anything, who am I? And I didn't really know
the foundation.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know the answer to that, so I was like, okay, this is a problem. And a couple things happened at that point in time, one of which is I started to go to a local church here in Sioux Falls called Celebrate. And that church has 6 services every single week, and I went to every service every week for several months just because I just couldn't get enough of it, and I was a mess. I was a train wreck. So I went to, that's one thing. The next thing is I was reading a book called Fathered by God that's by John Eldredge. And in that book, he quotes Exodus 15:3, which I have on the shirt here, Exodus 15:3, which says, "The Lord is a warrior." And I'd never heard that before. Kind of the only pictures I had seen of Jesus were this guy with babies and lambs and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not inaccurate, but I didn't want to be like that. But when I heard the Lord is a warrior, I said, okay, if that's the way this guy is, I want to know about him. I want to know who he is, because I felt like that's what I had to be to get my life back on track. Just to get it back to normal, I felt like I had to be a warrior. And that kind of set me on this path. I read that same chapter out of the John Eldredge book every day for a year, because that's just what I seem to do, and how I work best is I will grab onto something and I will just latch onto it. And that's what I did with that book. And the more I learned about Christ, the more I wanted to be like him, and the more I wanted to be like him, the more I realized that this guy really made me, and he made all of us for a very specific reason. You know, it's just like an inventor. The better the inventor gets, the more specific the inventions are. And God is like the ultimate inventor, obviously, so he makes his inventions very, very specific. It's not just broad reasons. There's very specific reasons why we were made. So I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do whatever I need to do to put food on the table, and then every spare second I have is going to be dedicated to understanding who this guy is and asking him why he made me. Because I don't want to go ahead and build something again that isn't in line with my purpose and have it all be for naught. You know, I might build something up again and then it'll get knocked down. Or I might build something up and it'll last, and at the end of my life I'll figure out this isn't what the real deal was. That'd be even worse. So I said, okay, I'm going to ask him until he says, you know, he tells me what the answer is, or he tells me to quit asking. And my favorite story is the story about the big evil king who the old widow kept poking him because she wanted him to do something for her. And he didn't care about people. He had no regard for people. But he said, finally, you know what, this widow is going to keep bugging me, so I better just do something about it. So it's the story about persistence. So I said, okay, I'm just going to keep asking him. And I stuck in that little space for about 2 years. And I'm always the big idea guy, the big vision guy, and people would ask me what you're up to these days, and I really didn't have an answer, so it really bothered me. And it really rocked my foundations. I had to get a new foundation, so I had to totally get rid of the old one. And in that time frame, as I'm praying this, and as I'm meeting with other godly men around my community to mentor me, some young men started showing up in my life. And I simply just started doing life with these guys. They were men, like we say, ages 18 and 35, whereabouts, and I simply started just doing life with them. I was like, okay, you're a mess, I'm a mess, we have a lot in common, so let's just hang out. And I started to mentor these guys and work out with them and so on and so forth. And make a long story short, one of the first guys I started mentoring, long before I ever even had a name for this thing, long before I ever even knew what was going to happen, his name was Gary. And Gary, when I met him, was just out of prison in the first week. He had been on drugs since he was 11, couldn't legally see his wife or his child at that point in time. And you know, he had been in and out of institutions since early adulthood, many, many, many years. And I met Gary. We just hung out, worked out. I mentored him, got him plugged into our church. He started doing stuff, and we hung out almost every day for a good 6 months. And his last charge, I went to the courthouse with him and into court, and I wrote a letter to the judge, and I spoke on his behalf and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of let him know, here's what we've been doing with Gary and some of the progress we've seen him make. And the judge says, okay, Gary, you're sentenced to 8 years, but if sending you back into the prison was the answer and was the only solution, I'd do that. But he goes, obviously there's another solution. You guys keep doing what you're doing, and I'll pull the sentence from you. It's going to hang over your head still, so you make one more mistake and you're going in, but he got a second chance. And now that individual is back with his wife. He's with his daughter. They just had a baby boy. He just got a promotion at his job he's had for over a year. He never had a job before, longer than a few weeks. And he's not, knocking it out of the park, but he's leading his household, and he's passing down that legacy now to his own son and his own children. So, we mentor dudes, and it's awesome. So that's kind of the story of how it all started.
That is amazing. It's a great story, and it takes a heck of a lot of courage to pick yourself up when you're down, and to kind of look in the mirror sometimes, and when that other person is looking back at you and kind of knows all the things you did, and it doesn't let you forget, but it also doesn't stop you from kind of changing the things that you really need to do to make changes. And the one thing I can tell you is it takes an enormous amount of strength to ask for help, and an enormous amount of strength to recognize the need for change. And so first of all, kudos to you for kind of taking the time and trying to figure out what that path had to be for you. And man, what a neat story about your friend and how things have turned out so far. It's really encouraging, and it's one of the reasons why when we met, I said I just have to have Jeremy on BoomShare and have him tell his story, because I think that this is what we need. If we want to be successful in our lives, we have to really understand what it takes to build real, mutually beneficial relationships that are based on love. And it doesn't matter, I'm not talking about, say, married love or romantic love. I'm talking about the kind of love human beings have to have for each other. Yeah. And so great story. How are things going so far, Jeremy?
It's wild. We put out a book. I'll show you here. We put out this book called Warrior: How God Makes Mighty Men. Boom! You got it. So yeah, and that book is meant to be used in Bible studies, small groups. So it's 7 chapters that outline the 7 main attributes of what makes a godly man. Each chapter is an attribute of a man, and each chapter is designed to be a 7-minute read, and there's questions at the end of it. And we have 58 guys going through and using this book right now currently. I just figured out the numbers today, which I'm pretty pumped up about. We still haven't publicly launched it or anything like that yet, because I want to just keep beating it up and see if there's anything we can change last minute. My background is publishing. I still run a publishing company called Throne Publishing, so we can kind of go back and change a few things and so forth. But so it's going well, and we do these things called Warrior Workouts, where it's a Bible study integrated into a workout. Some guys respond to that better. And I was showing you, Tom, we have some equipment here that this is like a dumbbell that we made out of its logs. One of my buddies named Mark Rasmussen makes equipment, and he made this for us. So, we can kind of do this. And
love it.
But yeah, so we have, and kind of the big thing that we're excited about is we're discipling young men, and part of discipling young men and helping them transform their life is understanding the value of a hard day's work and seeing how they can influence and add value to the workplace. So we have some employers saying, we have big workforce issues. We have retention problems. So we're saying, we're going to bring up these young men, 18 to 35. There's a ton of them. So if we can get them ready for the workforce, they're ready to hire them. And since we have a mentorship model and we track their progress, like you talk about in your book, about measuring growth and so forth, we can then say, okay, you might not have hired this guy since he's got 3 felonies, but here's the process. And we build a case for them. And the employers say, okay, we know the system, we understand the model, we believe in Warrior and what they're doing, so we'll hire this guy, even though we usually don't hire individuals with that kind of a background. So that's huge. That's our #1 focus right now, is building those employer relations.
Oh, that's pretty neat. Now, you say you have 58 people going through your program right now. Are these all? Are you doing this all in group settings mostly, or are you doing this mostly one-on-one? What's the story?
The number going through in the groups is 26. 26 of them are getting the experience in a group setting. The other are in a one-on-one setting. There are, I think, 10 or 11 individuals that I call like the hyper-focused dudes of one-on-one mentorship, where we're talking to them just about every day. And then the remaining are kind of once a week, or maybe once every other week, or to that effect, a little bit less random. But then we have some guys come in saying, I want to do this, I'm ready to rock, and we talk to them just about every day.
Cool.
So it's one-on-one mentorship, small groups, and then these warrior workouts are our three main methodologies for mentoring men.
Well, maybe one of these days I'll get up early and drive up to Sioux Falls and jump in one of your workouts.
That'd be sweet. You'd probably destroy us with your background.
No, not anymore.
Oh, speaking of which, your background. So we had a guy come in. He was referred to us, and when he came in, he's like a lot of us, like I was. His life was just a total mess. He had no confidence, nothing. We introduced him to God. He got baptized, all this stuff, and in long story short, in like a 6-month time, this dude became a different person. And he formally tried to get into the Army, but he couldn't pass the, what's the test? He couldn't get a high enough score on his
ASFAB.
ASFAB, thank you. He couldn't get a high enough score on his ASFAB, and he didn't want to try again. But he tried it again. He came in, 6 months, became a new dude, went and scored super high on his ASFAB. He said, I'm going in for Green Berets. And he just messaged me last week, and he passed basic training. Now he's on for infantry training. And so it's just really cool. Just awesome.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, normally right about now I ask questions about, hey, have there been any times in your, as you're working through what you do, where maybe you realize like your values weren't quite in sync with what you were doing, but you kind of already told that story, I think, and had something to add to it. I'm gonna kind of skip past that.
Yeah, and that was the situation.
So we already know how you got back on track. You're doing Warrior, and
well, I mean, and I got
you cut out there for a second. I don't know if you can hear me right now.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest reason that I say, how do we get back on track? I honestly can tell you, Tom, I didn't get myself back on track. What I did is I immersed myself into understanding who God is, and then that's how I understood who I am. And then I sought him out to say, why did you make me? Like, why? What is the reason that I was born? And I kept asking it. And, I feel like this is, I don't know the whole all-encompassing reason or anything like that, but I feel like this is a good piece. So, like, my back on track moment or how that happened was I really didn't do it myself. I relied on godly men and God himself to work with me. Because I couldn't do it on my own. There was no way I could have done it.
Yeah, I would agree. In fact, I would say my story's, somewhat similar, in terms of there was a fall or two along the way, a few stumbling points. And I'd say for a good 20 to 25 years I was asking that question. And one day it occurred to me that really all I really want to do with my life is help people. If there were a way for me to make a living helping people, then I would be satisfied. And nothing else I ever really latched onto was something that created that kind of a prospect of really being satisfied with my efforts. And so I don't know that I asked God directly. It was when I finally figured out who I was, and then I started to put the pieces together with the Bible studying that I had been doing for years, trying to figure out how do I live the example that Jesus provided, because it just was really difficult for me to apply that practically to my own life. And so it wasn't until I really just figured out, if you can figure out the best way for you to help people and figure out how to align that with what God and God wants from you and Jesus' example, then you're going to get there. And that was, I guess, so I can relate to what you're saying, but I think our paths just took different routes because, hey, we're human beings, we're different.
Totally.
The sun came out. I'm going to move over here just a little bit.
You're all right. I got a big brick building in front of me, so otherwise I got a window sitting right here, and I'm facing the west, so I got a big old brick building. Otherwise, I had the same thing going on.
Hey, so what do you need? How can people out there help at this point in Warrior's lifetime? How do we help you out?
Well, I appreciate you asking the question, and again, I appreciate you just letting me come on and share our story with you here. I mean, always the biggest things when people say, "What can we do to help?" I always say, "There's three things that we're out doing right now, and it's men, money, mentors." And the thing we need is men to mentor. We need men who want to mentor other men, and we're always out fundraising to support our efforts and to really build this into an organization. Because when I started to see these young men came, it got to a point where there's about 30 of them, and I realized, okay, there's 30 of these dudes. I'm just going to refer them on to somebody else, and I can just kind of be the middleman. And that's what I thought initially. And then we realized there's really not an organization that we could find out there that really speaks to these guys' language, exclusively focuses on them, and really tries to build an atmosphere that's conducive for their specific development at where they're at in their masculine journey, so to speak. So that's where we're like, okay, let's build this into our organization, and we have a big vision and a big plan for this thing. So we got a lot of work to do, but it takes men, money, and mentors.
I remember when the day we met, you said, Tom, only a man can teach another man how to be a real man, or something like that. And I thought, that makes such perfect sense. So I get the men, money, and mentors, because two of those three things are, kind of your customers and the folks the men who have to be there to mentor them and help them. And well, thank you so much for what you're doing out there, Jeremy. We really appreciate it. I know you're going to change people's lives. You're going to change the businesses that you touch with their new employees who you and God are helping turn into mighty men. And how do people get in touch with you?
Well, the best way to do it is through our website. I appreciate the question. Thank you. Our website is warriorleadership.org. Again, that is warriorleadership.org. And you can just always email me. It's just jeremy@warriorleadership.org. So feel free to visit our website. We have a blog out there and everything. And I really appreciate, Tom, what you're doing and you letting us come on here and share our story. And I appreciate this a lot. It takes a lot of work to do these programs. So thanks for taking the time.
Oh, well, it's not a problem. No matter what, when someone gives me the time, it's always a gift, and that's something I appreciate as well. I just had a thought that leads me to a question. I know the day we met, I talked to you about, kind of told you about a friend of mine in upstate New York. What are your intentions with Warrior? Is this something you plan to grow outside of Sioux City at some point? Meaning,
Absolutely.
man, I love your program. I love the way it sounds, and it may be just the type of message and the way it's being delivered that might help someone like Mike Ballman, who lives in Utica, New York, and is trying to help a community kind of regrow itself or redefine itself. And there are a lot of young people in that community that probably could benefit from a message like yours. And I'm not trying to push you out that far out east. I'm just trying to think about, hey, someday is there a way you see in your mind of how those type of connections might be able to be made?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's our model. We want to first make sure that what we do is excellent. We can do it with excellence. What we're doing works, and we figure out how to systemize it and put process around us so we can do more. What we first start off with people at a distance, so as we work with a few of them outside of Sioux Falls in South Dakota, and we just start with the book. We start with the book, and whether it's a one-on-one relationship where I connect them with another man who can mentor them, or we help them start their own small group using the Warrior book. And it's just kind of a new way, a different perspective to look at the Bible through a different lens. So that's how we always start. I appreciate the question again, Tom. We just start with a conversation.
All right. Well, maybe I'll try and make the connection, and we'll see what you two guys can make of it. So thanks again, Jeremy. I really appreciate you joining me on the 4th episode of BoomShare. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate the time you've taken. Folks, if you're looking to learn more about folks like Jeremy, I always put the links to these on my Facebook page. We have a Boom Life Values-Driven Success page on Boom Life. You can also follow me at GoBoomLife on Twitter. I usually about once every month, sometimes more often, write an article on GPS theory, which Jeremy alluded to, which my upcoming book is about, which is how to create that system that helps people really always understand what their foundation is, so they never lose it, and they don't really lose sight of what real success means to them. And finally, if you're looking for a way to kind of get help from the people in your world, there is a GPS theory app on my website called at GoBoomLife.com. Excuse me, GoBoomLife.com. So, Jeremy, thank you again. Anything you want to close with before we say goodbye?
No, I just want to tell everybody that no matter how tough it gets, no matter how rough it gets, no matter how far off the trail we get or how far along the trail we are, you know, the minute we ask God to show up and to do stuff with us and we ask Him for wisdom, He always answers every single time. He loves to do it. And so I just want to encourage people that we do have a Father out there, if you're, you know, and He's always ready to come back and teach us whatever He wants to teach us and engage in our life with us.
Amen.
Thank you very much, Tom. I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you for what you're doing. Thanks again for the efforts you're putting forward on this, and I'm really honored that you would let us come on and just share the story with you. So thank you.
Well, I wouldn't have had it any other way, Jeremy. All right, you have a great night, and thanks a lot. Take care.